Hello my lords, welcome back to Zeke's Lunchbox. Today we're talking about money. People are funny about money, but let's try and dispel that and chat about things a little bit further so you guys can get a better idea of maybe starting to think a little bit more thoroughly about avenues that you guys can go down. Since 2018, I've been working full time on Zeke's Lunchbox, making videos, selling my art, selling merch, and making a full-time career out of this. Prior to that, I was making little pockets of money here and there from 2014 to 2018 on Zeke's Lunchbox as well. So I've been hustling quite a lot throughout that whole time, and I feel like after all those years, I have quite a lot of things to say on the subject matter, and also things that I would have done differently had I known all the information that I have gone through and lived. Before we head into the video, however, I am still running my Supernova sale on my store. This time of year, I'm normally at Supernova, and instead of doing Supernova this year, I am having a sale over on my shop. So if you want 15% off your next order, use the code SUPER15 at checkout for 15% off. Minimum spend $15. All right, let's head into it. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to chat about 5 different avenues of how I make my money in my art. And those avenues are selling original art, commissioned artwork. So commissioned paintings where people seek me out and want to hire me for painting services to, make a painting. Merchandise, where I sell art prints and stickers, enamel pins. Number 4 will be commercial artwork. So commercial clients who hire me for illustration work for their products or for advertising purposes. And lastly, crowdfunding, so Kickstarter and Patreon, and I'll be talking about that a little bit more in depth. For all of those 5 avenues, I will be talking about the pros and cons, and then I'll give you a little personal story and some personal experiences to see if it's worth it for you. I'm really hoping in this video, by hearing my experiences, you guys can decipher and figure out what avenues are best for you. I also want to say in this video, I don't use these 5 avenues concurrently all together all the time, but I have in the past, used a couple of these avenues more than others. If I could get all these 5 avenues shooting off all the time perfectly in sync, I'd be really happy, but unfortunately, who has the time? I also want to clarify that this video isn't going to include any get-rich-quick schemes. I'm sure maybe those are possible. I don't believe in those get-rich-quick schemes. I'm very much a believer of longevity and trying to stay in the game for as long as possible, because that's in the end what my goal is. I'm just trying to stay afloat for as long as possible and hopefully do it for the rest of my life. Okay, income avenue source number 1. The most obvious one, selling original artworks. So we'll start off with the pros. You're not compromising your vision. You're making the artwork that you want to make. It doesn't have to adhere to any other standard except for the art that you purely want to make and love and enjoy. And you're selling that directly to a buyer who enjoys your work, is inspired by your work, and enjoys the stories that you are telling with your artwork. Another thing is you can charge however much you really want to charge, or however much somebody is willing to pay for it. It is really rewarding being able to sell your artwork directly to a buyer who loves and enjoys your artwork. I think the pros are kind of self-explanatory. You feel good about yourself. You're selling your artwork that you really love to make directly to a buyer. Okay, so the cons. It could be forever in between the buyers. It might be weeks, it might be months, you might have a hot streak. It's very unpredictable is what I'm ultimately saying. So that can be really scary, and I wouldn't really rely on it as a sole source of income, because it is pretty terrifying to not have buyers in between that time. And that's why you want to crank up the prices as much as possible. You're kind of trying to pad out as much time as possible in between selling artworks. Other cons are if you're selling it through a gallery, they take a big hefty cut. A lot of the time, I don't feel that galleries deserve that cut. All the works that I've sold in galleries have been mostly through my own advertising, which I feel like is unfair to myself because I've advertised the artwork. I deserve to get paid completely and not have the gallery take a cut. Another con would be if you're selling your artwork in the thousands or even the 5-figure sort of thousands, the esteem and the work that goes along with selling artwork in that price bracket is very stressful. Now, I can't give personal testaments to this, but for the friends that I know who have been successful in that avenue, I can tell you right now, it's taken a lot of mind games to get a buyer to spend that much money on a piece of art. And there's a lot of fluff that comes along with it. You know, really spending a lot of time nurturing that buyer. You might spend a whole day talking to that buyer, really talking about your artwork, your art process. It's a lot of emotional labor. The sort of mind games that you could be playing are, if you have potential buyers, you could be booking them in for a viewing at the same time on the same day, so they kind of cross paths and you look like you're really in demand. Those are the sort of mind games that I personally find too stressful to want to do, but those are the sort of things that are possible and I hear artists do a lot. If that's something that you are willing to do and you're happy to be a little bit conniving, a little bit cheeky in the buying process, if you have good connections, obviously it's a great avenue, and if you got it, do it. I find it very stressful and it makes me really uncomfortable. One last thing about selling original artwork, however, it's not scalable. It's a good combination for burning yourself out because it's all about quantity and getting as many paintings out there as possible. So if you're somebody who takes forever to paint a painting, by forever I mean like 6 weeks, it may not be an option for you to sell directly to the consumer or to the buyer on a regular basis. All right, second avenue is commissioned artwork. So pros. Commission artworks can be really great as a source of income, obviously. They're really good for getting a big burst of income. I believe that if it's a commission artwork, you need to be charging a lot more than your regular paintings, just because you're going out of your way to make somebody's vision come to life. With that, the money can be pretty decent if you play your cards right. Another pro is you have full control of the process. So they are approaching you, but just so you know, you need to take the lead on the scenario. So you show them and direct them through the whole timeline of the process of what a commission is going to look like. You have the control to dictate what happens in that process. So another good pro is that you can create a lot of buzz and use that as marketing. Show that good form of social proof when you do a commission, because it shows everybody that you're trustworthy in this process of doing commissions. It shows that you're in demand. It's all about building esteem, and commissions can be decent for that as a good marketing tool to signal to others out there that you're in demand. Now let's get into the cons. The cons are clients can be really difficult, especially if you're doing a personal small client. So like just somebody approaching you to buy a painting for their home, they won't have as much money to play around with. So although the money can be decent if they can afford it, it can still be quite stressful trying to get paid. The process could be really laborious. It could be a lot of emotional labor of discussing what is correct, and agreeing on a final outcome can be really difficult. And then lastly, you might not get paid at all because they get scared and run off. Lots of cons that are very uneasy and scary, and it's kind of up to you guys if it's worth it and risk all that time and effort. Another thing is the money can fluctuate, just like with selling original paintings. You don't know when the next commission's going to come through, so it is a little unreliable as a source of income. Now for my personal take on it and how I've done it in the past, with commission paintings, it's something that I used to do quite a bit in 2018 and 2019. I really liked it as a source of income because it was like, ooh, it's like a nice little burst. It also makes me feel like, for my own personal self-esteem, it feels like I'm valued, which is really nice, and it makes me really motivated to want to make a painting for somebody. I think it's really special having that connection with someone as well who really enjoys your artwork. I've been very strict when it comes to all of my commissions, and I also direct them and guide them with the whole timeline as well to really prevent anybody from flaking. And I think because I have done that, I haven't had anyone flake on me, which is great. In the later stages anyway. I've had a bunch of people who inquire, a couple of emails back and forth, and then I never hear back from them. That's fine. That kind of is par for the course. What I'm really talking about is people flaking at the last minute. You've almost finished the painting and they don't give that last payment. That's what I'm talking about. If you're lost, what I do is I usually ask for 50% up front and then 50% afterwards. Once the painting's complete, I take a photo of it, I send it to them, I wait for full payment, and then I send it off. I also have a contract as well, just telling them and guiding them throughout the whole process, saying that they've approved the sketch, they've approved the color palette, approved the size, and approved the shipping costs as well as my labor costs. So you just want to get all of those details sorted prior and completely agreed upon. Have a proper timeline for all of that and you're ready to go. So it's a lot of work. It's really up to you if it's worth all the work. I stopped doing them in 2019 because I did find that it was a lot more work than I was really getting paid for. So it's up to you if that's something you're willing to do. I also think they're really unsustainable and very unscalable. Just like with selling original artworks, I have to make the artwork and then get paid rather than me making the artwork once and then getting paid multiple times, which leads us to the next point. Okay, the third avenue is merchandise. Big galleries use merchandise. Lots of artists have merchandise. Merchandise really is like the lifeblood of a lot of businesses and the lifeblood of creative businesses. So if you're here and you're poo-pooing them, too bad. Like, it's the standard that everybody uses to make some money. So pros when it comes to making merchandise. So by that I mean making art prints, t-shirts, enamel pins. So some pros when it comes to selling merchandise. It's pretty good constant income, which is nice. Every day I wake up and there's a possible sale there, which is a nice little unplanned little burst of money, which is nice. It's nice and scalable, as I mentioned prior. So you make the artwork once and sell it a bunch of times. That sounds like a really good use of my time. Now, merchandise doesn't have to be cold and gross. You're a creative person. Make really cool, interesting merchandise. Have fun with the packaging. Make it as playful as you want and, you know, have it fit into your brand. I also think it makes you a little more self-sufficient. It's really nice padding in between commissions if you are somebody who wants to do commissions or sell original artworks, and can be good padding in between that. As I mentioned, those sales can be far and wide between one another, so the merchandise can pad your way through and keep you afloat. Now let's talk about all the negatives, because there's quite a lot. One, it takes up a lot of time to run the merchandise side of an art store. It's basically a full-time job. I think it's really difficult to manage the commissions and original artworks and the art store at the same time, because you will have to do a lot of marketing to get those sales up. It's a lot of work. So it's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme by any means, especially with social media and everybody almost has a store now. It's very competitive and your products really have to stand out, and you have to be very passionate about your products in order to run a store. And not just that, it can be really expensive to run a store. I do think you need to put quite a bit of money into a store in setting up the website or even having market stalls. And then you're also making sure that the products are really good. That may take a couple $1,000s. It is possible to do it with smaller amounts, and I will get into that in a moment, but it is expensive to run, not just in your time, but also with money. The last con is you might not move that much stuff. So you've spent all this money, you spent all this time, you might not move that stock, and it's again not guaranteed that people are going to enjoy those products. It's a lot of trial and error. Running a store is a full-time job. I need to drill that into you guys. I have a lot of patrons who ask me about running a store and I kind of scare them off a little, but I think it's the more realistic side of it all. Running a store is a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of marketing. Do not ever think it's just going to be one little quick side thing that you're gonna do. I'm just gonna do it on the side just really quickly. Nah, it's a lot of work. My personal take on running the merchandise side of my business, it's not perfect. I have wanted to expand it for years. I've just honestly not had the time to expand it. I find it really difficult managing the store, and my goals are to expand the store in the future, but like I just said, it's a lot of work and I just haven't been able to spend enough time or money on it. I have managed to make, you know, decent little pockets of money from the store pretty sufficiently and at a pretty small scale. That being said, I don't think the cash flow is quick enough. It could just be better. I'm still doing it, so That says a lot, right? All right, the next round is commercial art. So what is commercial art? Commercial art is when a business approaches you to make merchandise or advertising materials for their business. So rather than a commissioned piece of art is by an individual, a commercial piece of art is approached to you by a business. Commercial art, it's excellent money if all goes according to plan. Working with big brands shows that you are trustworthy and is a good investment of your time for the long run. It's a really good thing to add to your portfolio and also your bio to really pump yourself up. When you align yourself with other brands and worldwide brands that people know and are household names, it shows that you are, you know, somewhat a pretty big deal. And now for the cons. It can be really difficult to land those sort of clients. It's quite enigmatic and very hush-hush on how those clients even approach you. Because everything's very secretive, the rates are all very confusing of what you should be getting paid and what is fair for you. You could get really difficult clients. I hear so many stories of people having terrible clients, making last-minute edits, not paying them on time, not paying them at all. Another con is you are completely compromising your personal vision. It is really unfortunate when you have to do a bunch of work that you just do not care for. You don't even want to share it on your Instagram because it's so commercial that it feels completely cold and you don't care for the work whatsoever, but you are getting paid to compromise that. All of those horror stories I personally have not experienced. I have had 2 constant clients over the last couple of years and I've had nothing but positive experiences with those guys. One of the best commercial art gigs that I've ever had was recently with YouTube. I have a whole other video on that explaining that project if you want to watch it. Working with YouTube was really great, really professional. The deadline was really quick, but the payment was super quick as well. And I get to associate the Zeke's Lunchbox brand with working officially with YouTube. But all that being said, I would love to work with more commercial clients in the future, especially with fashion and textiles designing and merchandise designing. I would prefer to specialize in more clothing-based collaborations in future. Overall though, I have nothing but positive things to say about commercial work. That being said, I don't do it enough to give a really good in-depth point of view on it, but I don't have much negativity to report on it, but just know that it is out there. Okay, lastly, let's talk about the last avenue of income. Patreon, crowdsourcing. Pros with Patreon. It's a nice steady burst of income. So I know every single month there's going to be something that saves me. If all those avenues that I just discussed, maybe in a month, none of those things happened whatsoever. I didn't have any commercial clients or I didn't sell anything on the store. I know Patreon is always going to be there, and Patreon has been a really nice buffer to keep me afloat. It's nice knowing there is something coming every single month. So that's a huge plus, especially the uneasy income might be very stressful to people. I've kind of gotten used to it, but the Patreon has really made working on Zeke's Lunchbox just a little bit easier. Thank you, patrons. You guys make it so possible to do all of this, so I'm so grateful. Another form of crowdsourcing income is Kickstarter. Late last year, I did a Kickstarter with my tarot card partner, Julian. We started raising money for the tarot card project. It's a lot of work. We made $10,000, which is excellent. Now, mind you, $10,000 is not all profit. You know, a good half of that has to go back to giving out rewards to people. The other half is so we can use that to get samples of our tarot card deck. And for marketing purposes, for me, crowdsourcing just feels like I'm not compromising my vision whatsoever. I'm getting paid for exactly what I want to make, and it feels like a really good scalable way to make money. So good use of my time. I'm not compromising my vision. Tick, tick. Let's get into the cons. Cons are, like everything that I mentioned, a lot of work. Patreon has taken me a really long time to figure out exactly what I want to do with that platform. For a while, when I started, I was just posting what I normally regularly post on all the other platforms. So extra little videos or extra behind the scenes pics. I would also have a thing where I give people out little physical rewards every single month. To me, it felt like it didn't have a very specific identity, and I had to change that. And it took me a good year to figure that out. So I switched things up on Patreon, and now I have a service where I just give people advice and a video response helping them with their artwork. For me, it feels a lot more rewarding. It feels like the Patreon has a really specific identity, so I understand what that service is. The big con was I just really wasn't sure how to use Patreon, and going forward for everybody else, do not consider it some quick solution. You need to think about how your Patreon is going to stand out from the rest, because obviously getting paid every month, it seems awesome and everybody's on it. So you have to be, it's very competitive is what I'm saying. You have to figure out what your niche is on Patreon. And now for Kickstarter, that source of income isn't constant in any way. That was just a big burst, which was excellent, but we did have to work our asses off to get that money. Every day we woke up and thought about new ways of how we were going to get that information out to people and try and convince them that we were trustworthy and that they should back the project. So that's a huge con, and I do know people who do Kickstarters every 6 months or so to help boost their merchandise store. So that could be a possibility to you guys, but it's a lot of work. And I guess the confusion about crowdsourcing is a huge con because it takes a lot of discussion to prove that you're trustworthy. So consider that. If you don't have a following, it's also going to be really difficult to convince people to give you some money. But yeah, those are my little personal takes, and I hope that with my personal stories, it helps you figure out what you can do with Patreon or Kickstarter. All right, you guys, that's it for this week's video. I hope you took something away from it. If you did, comment below which avenue of income will you expand further on. Comment below. And if you guys want further help with me giving you advice on making money or steps that you should be making with your art, consider joining the Patreon. This is the last month of Patreon at the current tier price. I am changing my Patreon tiers for the month of April. Currently, I give a email out and a video response giving you guys advice on a particular work of art and where it could improve. Or you guys ask me a question and I try and do my best to research and give personal anecdotes and also researched opinions on the subject matter. So for the April month, I am splitting the tiers and putting the video section in a higher tier and the email section in the regular $10 tier. We'll chat further about that in a couple of weeks. Consider joining Patreon. It is the last time when you're going to get it at the lower tier price. All right, you guys, I will see you in the next video. Make sure you like and subscribe if this video was of value to you. Catch you later. Bye. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Da, 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 da. The tape is still there. Someone suggested that we should name it. Comment below, what should we name Mr. Tape?